What's going on, everyone? Hope you're doing well. It's been a minute since I posted a new episode, and I am working on something here on the SpoolBus. Just a little bit of a maintenance overhaul and a repair internal to this thing right here. Now, what is this? This is a little bit of a secret weapon that the SpoolBus has. Now, what is this? What are we looking at here? It doesn't look like a factory produced transfer case like the one that you can see here, but it is a Jeep transfer case. It's made by Dana. It's a Dana 300, so this black part that you see is a cast iron case, and it houses gears instead of gears in a chain. If you're familiar with the transfer case that came in the Jeep, it looks a whole lot different than that NP231J. This is a Dana 300, and the Dana 300 was found in CJs, like a CJ5 or CJ7. This one, I believe, came out of an 84, which was one of the last years that they produced this in the Jeeps. But it was also found in things like the International Scouts and Broncos, I believe. The footprint of this is actually within an inch or so of a 231J with the slip yoke eliminator. People that are familiar with the Dana 300 transfer case, or any of the Dana transfer cases that were cast iron like this, will notice right away that this thing is reverse. It's upside down. And normally the Dana 300, this would be the bottom. And I didn't cut this or anything. This was actually designed this way to be like a little oil pan that the transfer case would have had. So all the billet pieces that you see on here, all the shiny aluminum stuff, is, you see BDT, that's Behemoth Drivetrain. This company has been revamped, purchased by a larger company, and it is being built. They took some of the original designs, improved upon them, made it so much better. And if you Google Behemoth Drivetrain and find some bad things written about them, it's the old company, new company. I haven't dealt with too closely, but I've talked to them a couple times, and it seems like real good people, really focusing on customer service and a quality product. So what we have, again, the pan that would normally be on the bottom of this is removed. There would have been shifter rails that came into this transfer case. Those have been capped, and this front billet piece also covers the holes that would have been left from that. Holes in the back here that have been plugged. I made one of them a drain plug, one of them I don't ever use, and one of them I made into a sight tube. What's now the top of the transfer case is where the shifters for four-wheel drive and four-wheel low happen. And then this is a range box, which is an extra low range. So this transfer case inside has no chain. That's the biggest difference between this and the 231, is that this would have had a chain if it was the 231. This is directly driven gears. There's an idler set up in the middle. Now, there's two sets of gears here that mesh together for front and rear outputs and high and low. There's lockouts inside here that don't allow you to put one in high and one in low, because that would be bad. But you can engage this into high or low, and you can engage this into low. I also have the ability to independently drive the front or rear, but that's not something I do very often, particularly given the axles that I'm running. The main secret weapon that we're here to talk about is what is inside of this. I put inside here a set of planetary gears from a NV273. So that's a Ford F250 or F350 transfer case. It's a 6-pinion set of planetaries. I don't remember the torque spec, but it was insane. This thing can handle more torque than 3 of my Jeeps could ever put out. More torque than 3 of my Jeeps. So when this is in low and this is in high, you've got 2.72 to 1, and that's kind of like what you'd have in the NP231. When this is in low range, it's only 2.62 to 1. So that's a little bit different. It can be nice sometimes. It depends on the trail ride and what you're trying to do. Sometimes you're keeping up with somebody else that's got a little bit different output ratio than you, and you just kind of need a little bit higher low range. The 262 works out great. But when you really want to crawl, secret weapon time, you put this in low and this in low, and you've got monster torque, super, super low range. So let's take a look at what that looks like. All right, the only thing you're not going to be able to see here is me shifting the range box here, but it looks the same as these shifters over here. Now, right now everything's in neutral. The input from this, which by the way, this is kind of a cool feature. I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritty of how all this was put together necessarily, but this is essentially an adapter that allows me to run the Dana 300. This bolts up to the back of the transmission. It would work on the AX15 or the AW4 automatic. And there's 6 different clocking positions in here that you can use. So I could rotate this transfer case exactly where I need it, so it's not hitting the floor, it's not hanging down too low. So that was key, and also the just the ability to bolt it up. The input gear here was just out of the 231. So the being all new process or new venture transfer cases, those input gears are all very similar. So it's the correct spline count for my transmission, and it's the correct bolt pattern, and I can clock it. There's 2 halves to this thing, so you can split it apart. I'm going to open this up a little bit later and show you what's going on inside there, but just take a look at this. So neutral right now, this would be the regular output for high range. So that's 1 to 1. You can kind of see what I'm doing there, rotating that 1 to 1. And if we put this in low now, can be kind of testy to do. There we go. That's low range. It's a 262 to 1 low range. Now we can put the front in low range. We can take the rear out and only turn the front. There we go. And we can also engage this into its low range. It's way easier to do with cable shifters. Look at that. I mean, that, you can see how fast I'm turning the input and how little the outputs are turning. So that's your secret weapon right there. It's typically what I do driving around. Front's in neutral. That's this shifter here. The rear is in high. That's just 1 to 1. And then when I need low range, I just pop the strong box here, this range box or doubler, into low. And then I get the standard 272 to 1 low range. That's 2-wheel drive low. So that's another secret weapon, because you can engage low range for 2-wheel drive, which is super nice. Backing into a tight spot, pulling into the garage, backing up a trailer, hitching up a trailer on a gravel road or up a steep hill. 2-wheel low is so nice to have. If you're looking at this wondering, how in the world do you control 3 separate shifters that are on all different areas of the Jeep? Like the 231 shifter is 1 lever that moves back and forth. This is where the cable shifter comes into play. I have these routed. These bolts are up like this because there's a bracket that mounts off of this, just still attached underneath my Jeep. And these cables come in with a little rod end on them like this. So I have them routed, basically, it does about like that. This is the shifter up inside, and this is how it mounts to that. People get really confused by the shifters because there's 3 of them, first of all, and second, because it's like, it doesn't make sense. Which one do I want to use when? Front, high, low, neutral, rear, high, low, neutral, and then there's one that just says high, low. So that's the setup that I have. I kind of had to squeeze it in there, but it's all right where the normal lever would be for the stock transfer case. All right, this is the strong box split open. This half is basically just the shifter and the shift gear here. This is the real guts of it on this half here. So that's the planetary gears. And really those are always spinning if the input shaft is turning. But you can see the 6 planetary gears around there, and then the, is that called the sun gear? I forget. The outer planetary that had to be pressed into this housing. You can buy them already complete with that gear set in it as well, but it saves you some money to source a transfer case and do it yourself. Plus it's interesting to learn about this stuff. So I'm not going to pull that apart because there's a snap ring and a seal and everything that has to come apart to do that, but I've actually got a lot of miles on this thing, probably 35,000 I think coming up on what you're looking at here. But this thing, that's the shift action of that, and that's the inside of the strong box. I hope you enjoyed the overview of the secret weapon that is underneath the SpoolBus. I'll see you guys in the next one.